Right. Well done if you got through that last one. I don't think I really didn't get through it. So hopefully this one won't be as heavy. So chapter 5. The Djinn Order. The good, the bad and the very bad. It's a difficult task to research and obtain information about a race of beings that prefers to remain hidden from us. For the most part, all we have are stories and legends that have been handed down through generations. Most of the information in this chapter comes from information obtained from Phil's trips to several Middle Eastern countries. Information he gathered was in the form of written legends, passages from the Quran, and stories from holy men and families he met. Later, we found additional data in a number of books and papers written by Muslim scholars. These references appear in the bibliography. The Djinn are much older than the human race, but exactly how much older is unknown. However, if they were around before Adam, the time period from their creation to the present day could be millions of years. A being that could exist for hundreds of centuries could accumulate a great deal of knowledge about the universe and be very powerful. As you might expect, in their long lifespans, they have developed a complex society and have evolved with a great deal of diversity. When compared to a human, a Jinni's lifespan is very long. A person in good health may live to be 80 years old. We consider this age quite elderly, but a Jinni of this age is yet a toddler. In a person's lifespan, an individual learns at his or her own pace. This rhythm is determined not only by the individual's interest level, but also by his or her goals, spiritual development and intelligence. Just like their human counterparts, Djinn are born with free will and have very little knowledge and power. Humans attend school to learn more about their world, how to function within it, and how to contribute to society. The Djinn do the same. The big difference is that a human child may have 16 years or so of direct schooling, while Djinn juveniles may be in training for thousands of years before they can graduate to a higher level. People mistakenly tend to place all Djinn in a single category, assuming all act with a single purpose, controlled by one mentality. This is far from the case. Each Jinni is an individual, just as is a person. Although Djinn are subject to the same laws and morals as humans, operating within a social construct, there are renegades who choose not to follow rules. The information the human race has about the Djinn not only comes from historical writings and stories, but from Djinn who like to talk excessively. Another way information about them filters through the dimensions. Individual Djinn react differently to human presence. There are Djinn who are harmless and feel indifference towards us, and there are Djinn who interact with humans but benignly. Many of the younger Djinn are just as curious about us as we are about them, and it is in this type of encounter in which a juvenile Jinni will take on a different form, such as an animal, fairy, or other type of entity, that would surely get our attention, and at the same time conceal its true nature. Shape-shifting appears to be the only way these youngsters can get close enough to study us. On a similar note, younger Djinn seem to be more attracted to children than adults and will often appear before them in one of the forms mentioned above. They may also stay invisible and communicate using only a disembodied voice. We use the term youngster here, but please realise that although the human child may be 6 years old, the Djinn child is most likely thousands of years old. Some of the very old and powerful Djinn have interacted with humans in the past, but they seem to have their own agendas for the most part. A few of these powerful Djinn have been sealed in prisons by angels, and in some cases by King Solomon himself. Although these Djinn are not necessarily evil, they have acquired dangerous amounts of power and are unpredictable. They have the free will to act out and may someday pose a threat to humanity. In old Arabian stories, it is this type of Jinni that is freed from imprisonment. As the story often goes, the Jinni is so grateful that it, usually a he, grants its human liberator 3 wishes. After the 3 wishes are fulfilled, the Jinni goes on its way, completely free. However, the story doesn't always turn out well for the people involved. The centuries-long imprisonment often makes a Djinni resentful, angry, and even psychotic. When finally released from his prison, the Djinni sometimes takes his anger out on the human who set him free, and then continues to exact revenge on all creatures he blames for his long period of captivity, the human race being enemy number one. The Thief of Baghdad was a popular movie made in 1940 that features a bitter, angry Djinni. So, in the video before the last one, so video 4, I've got a lot of the kind of movie stills and things like that, posters about that film, and it says about the film. The Thief of Baghdad 1940 is a British fantasy film produced by Alexander Calder and directed by Mitchell Powell, Ludwig Berger and Tim Whelan. It starred a child actor, Sabu, in addition to Conrad Veidt, John Justin, June Deprez, and a brilliant performance by Rex Ingram as the Djinni. The hero of the film is a boy named Abu, who finds a strange bottle washed ashore on a beach. The bottle is old, made of brass and glass, and the top is sealed. This method of imprisonment was not a lamp as told in the Book of 1001 Nights, but a brass bottle with a lead stopper and covered with a magnetic iron mesh with the seal of King Solomon or one of his priests. Abu breaks the seal, and out of the neck of the bottle shoots thick black smoke. The smoke takes the form of a powerful giant Djinni who has been imprisoned in the bottle for more than 2,000 years. Recognising the figure as Djinni, the boy commands him to do his bidding. The Djinni answers him with a thundering no. Abu reminds the Djinni that he has set him free, and according to the will of the king who imprisoned him, King Solomon, the Djinni must grant him 3 wishes. The Djinni replies, "For 2,000 years I have been in the bottle, imprisoned by the great Solomon himself, master of all Djinn. For the first 1,000 I vowed that I would serve in gratitude and grant 3 wishes to any man who freed me. But in the second 1,000 years I became angry at all men and vowed to destroy he who set me free, to appease my anger, so prepare to die." The Djinni attempts to crush Abu with his giant foot, and right before he squishes him, the boy calls out to him, saying he is a liar. The Djinni pauses and answers, "What do you mean? Take care what you say to me." Abu says that he doesn't believe the Djinni came from the bottle since it is so small and he is so large. They argue, and the Djinni proves he was in the bottle by turning himself back into smoke and re-entering it, promising that after he proves his point he will kill Abu. When the Djinni is completely in the bottle, Abu quickly reseals the bottle and raises his arm to throw it back out to sea. The Djinni pleads with the young man to set him free again. From inside the bottle he promises not to kill him and will indeed grant him 3 wishes. He gives his word in the name of the most powerful, Allah. So Abu cautiously opens the bottle. The Djinni resumes his giant form and bows down before the boy. The rest of the story revolves around the 3 wishes, 2 of which Abu blunders. After the 3rd wish is granted, the Djinni lets out a thunderous roar, free at last, and flies up into the sky to rejoin his clan in the Djinn world. Though the above film was created for the silver screen, Middle Eastern lore also has many stories of fishermen who dredge up mysterious sealed bottles in their nets. The fishermen usually quickly throw the bottles back into the water without opening them, since they fear that the bottles may be prisons confining nasty Djinn. Organisation. Now that we have a basic introduction to the Djinn psyche, let's explore their society. Djinn families. Djinn have families much like humans. However, their immediate family unit is small, usually 1 child for each set of Djinn parents. According to what we discovered, the Djinn are able to procreate only once in their lifetime. A male and female Djinn can produce only 1 offspring. As a result, their population is slowly dwindling and their numbers will diminish. Although this may seem unfair, Islamic teachers will tell you that it is the will of Allah and that humans and Djinn may not understand this grand plan, but it most likely is the way things are meant to unfold. It is clear in the Quran and some written works of Persian origin that mankind is the 2nd race in the universe, the successors of the Djinn. We discussed Djinn lifespans earlier and want to relate those points here to progeny. Since human lifespans are relatively short and prone to disease, we need to have multiple offspring in order to survive as a species. According to Buddhist belief, a single human lifespan is much too short to reach enlightenment. A person must return in physical form for many generations before he or she can learn enough about the universe and the true nature of reality to ascend to a higher consciousness and be free of the physical body. Although the Djinn apparently do not reincarnate, they have a similar goal, reaching enlightenment, and just like us, some Djinn lose their way and are on a different path. A certain amount of caution and care must be used when dealing with Djinn families. Djinn parents are very protective of their children, and if you injure or anger any family member, especially a child, its parents and relatives may seek you out for revenge. In ancient Persian teachings, it was mentioned how people could deal with the Djinn and give them all the space they require. Readers were also taught not to do certain things that may injure juvenile Djinn, such as starting wildfires, throwing old food and human waste into lakes, caves and the desert, and most importantly, not building in locations where a family or individual Jinni share space with our world. As a Jinni's emotions are much more intense than a human's, they are volatile and unpredictable in their reactions to injuries and affronts. Djinn clans. Djinn families belong to larger units called clans. The members of the clans include those who are partially or fully related to the Djinn family. Each clan has a leader, a powerful older Djinn master whom the others obey. Although these clans make for a loosely knit social structure, the clan leader is held responsible for the actions of its members. In most cases, male Djinn are the troublemakers and break the rules. Female Djinn, known as Jinni,
You're losing the plot now, isn't you?
Mark's in the background. Are responsible for keeping the family structure intact and are quite serious about this responsibility. And most are quite protective of their children and immediate family members. The Jinni will not interact with the human race unless provoked, yet are believed to be responsible for most cases of possession in human beings. In Iran and Iraq, most people will avoid isolated caves because they are afraid they might encounter a Jinni with her child. The people of these countries believe a Jinni will make the first strike, even unprovoked, against a person to protect her child. It's clear that people are afraid of the Djinn, and they seem to mistrust us as well, knowing our violent and unpredictable nature. Clans are brought to Djinn kingdoms. Clans are thought to be ruled by Djinn kings who are able to stay in power due to their abilities. In most cases, these Djinn rulers are the oldest, wisest and the most powerful of this ancient race. According to the Holy Man film met in Saudi Arabia, Djinn kings can rule over thousands of other Djinn. The Djinn who serve a king must give him tribute once a century. What this tribute consists of is unclear, but according to some legends it involves some type of energy, and in some Arabic stories a human soul. This belief is also mirrored in Christianity, where minions of the devil will collect human souls in exchange for favours, such as money, power and sex. The lesser demon is allowed to keep a small portion of the collected soul for itself, but the majority must be given to the master. This similarity is interesting, as some Christian and Muslim beliefs share the same roots. The question is, if you've sold your soul, was it given to a fallen angel or a Jinni? Djinn kings can only be removed from power through assassination, a reason Muslim mystics and holy men believe is evidence the king's rule with an iron fist. The highest king of all the Djinn is said to be Al-Masjid al-Aswad, a member of the Order of Black Djinn. The Black King of the Djinn, Al-Masad al-Aswad, is mentioned in a 15th century Arabic manuscript known as Kitab al-Bulam, the Book of Wonders. In Persian mythology, the Djinn colour was considered the shade or colour of its skin. However, since they lack definite physical form, skin colour is technically irrelevant when identifying a particular type of Djinn. From what Phil discovered during his journey to the Middle East, the colours of a Djinn's skin were ancient Persians' attempts to classify Djinn power rather than describe a physical appearance. In Turkey, ancient drawings that are 2,000 or more years old show Djinn in half-human, half-reptilian forms with horns, scaly skin, lizard-like eyes and claws for hands. This depiction is similar to the Christian description of devils and demons. It is also interesting to note that Islamic art dating from only 800 years ago shows the Djinn as more human-like. It's not clear why the images have changed over the course of time, but perhaps early Islamic artists were trying to present the Djinn in a form people felt was more immediately fear-inducing. Djinn classes. There are many names for the Djinn classes, describing their likes and dislikes or where they live. The Quran mentions only 3 classes: Djinn, Ifrit and Marid. Other names include Jan, Ghoul, Shaitan, Hin, Nansaz, Shik, Silat and a host of others, depending on the local dialect. In Western lore, the Ghoul is known as a cemetery-haunting, cannibalistic, blood-drinking creature. The Hin are weak Djinn, closely related to animals, and prefer to appear as dogs. The Ifrit class is cited only once in the Quran in reference to a Jinni who fetched the Queen of Sheba's throne at Solomon's command. As a result, scholars are uncertain if the term Ifrit definitely refers to a Djinn class. The Marid are unruly and rebellious. The Nasnas are another weak form of Djinn, hybrids of human-like and animal-like forms, and may account for some of the reported encounters with mysterious creatures throughout history. The Shik are lower Djinn, appearing as half-creatures that are literally only half-formed, thus giving them a monstrous appearance. The Shaitans are rebellious Djinn associated with demonic forces. For simplicity's sake, we've classified the Djinn according to their power and behaviour. The classification we use is by colour, an easier way to understand this ancient, complex race. The colour order, starting with the weakest to the most powerful, is green, yellow, blue and black. There is also another group, red, which will be described separately. They belong to an order that does not answer to any family, clan or king, only Iblis. The only way a Jinni can advance in rank and increase in power is to obtain more knowledge. For example, Djinn can manipulate the matter in the universe by changing the vibration of strings. This action is much like playing a guitar. The more chords a person knows, the wider the repertoire. Individual string vibrations determine the type of particles and matters formed, and Djinn are able to change the notes of the strings, thus changing one form of matter into another. This talent for changing matter properties does not come naturally. Just like humans who must learn any profession, it is a skill, something developed over a long period of time, usually taught. Some people go through life learning very little, staying on more or less the same intellectual level, and the same is true with the Djinn. A Djinn's progression from green to blue is not something that happens naturally. It is earned with a great deal of practice, study and hard work. Some Djinn are tempted to abuse their power, similar to some people. However, most Djinn who achieve high ranks use their power wisely, since they believe they are responsible for their actions in the face of God and will have to answer for their deeds at the Day of Judgment. Green Djinn. Green Djinn have the least amount of power. The majority of green Djinn are young, and they usually enjoy acts of mischief and pranks played on other Djinn and humans. There are some older Djinn still at the green level, but for the most part they keep to themselves and stay away from humans. It's interesting to note that in the 1960s television series I Dream of Jeannie, the genie was this green variety, very young with limited power. As the series progressed, Genie became more comfortable performing increasingly amazing feats of Djinn magic to make the shows more interesting. Green Djinn can shapeshift into animals and humans and have the ability to fly. They can also change from one form of matter into another, but their power in this area seems to be limited due to their lack of knowledge regarding the relationship between matter and energy in the physical universe. A similar example would be a child trying to build a computer from a kit. The child does not have the experience and knowledge to complete the task, but an adult who has studied electronics, engineering and computers will be able to assemble the kit's parts and have a working computer in no time because the adult possesses knowledge and experience and understands how the device works. Although green Djinn are mostly children and young adults, they can be thousands of years old, and their knowledge of human history and the multiverse is much greater than that of any human being. Green Djinn are characterised as being playful, vengeful, cruel and sometimes kind. Indeed, they are quite temperamental. Among the human race, it's known that some children are more aggressive, smarter and or stronger than others. Some are better at science, math, engineering, art and other things. The green Djinn also have different levels of power, knowledge and talents, but like us, are all different. Some human children are cruel and some are kind. We've all heard about children who use magnifying glasses to burn ants, or children who pull the wings off of a fly just to see it suffer. Hopefully, you'll never encounter a green Djinn with the same attitude. To them, you are like that fly. Green Djinn often attempt to come into our world simply to explore or to have fun, and when they do, they may interact with people of any age. It is an Islamic belief that green Djinn live in holes in the ground. Consequently, you should never dump your garbage in a hole, or urinate or jump into one, as it might harbour a temperamental green Djinn who won't hesitate to punish you as it sees fit. Some holes in the ground lead to a subterranean world, and it's possible they are actually portals that connect the Djinn world to ours. If they are portals to another reality, once you enter, it might be impossible to find your way out without knowing where the door is. These portals are not restricted to holes in the ground either. Similar openings have been reported in outcrops of rock, the size of mountains, and occasionally randomly hanging in mid-air. Many Middle Eastern mystics believe that if you jump into a Djinn hole, you'll vanish from our world and enter another plane of existence. The Djinn may offer to show you the way out, but for a price. The Djinn may ask for your soul, or force you to agree to bring others to the hole so that it can hold you all hostage. They may also ask you to bring certain types of food, alcohol or tobacco on a regular basis. It must be noted that, although Djinn in their natural state might be composed of plasma, most of them can take a physical shape for short periods of time. This means that a Jinni is able to take in nourishment by absorbing energy or consuming food. It's thought that many Djinn enjoy the taste of a variety of our everyday foods, especially ice cream and fruits. Human foods only partially provide sustenance, however. Djinn must get most of their nourishment by absorbing various types of energy from living things. The Little Man from the Hole in the Ground. The following account has been in Phil's files for 20 years. At the time he received it, he didn't know how to classify it. He was concentrating more on his investigation of the UFO phenomenon, and the report didn't seem to fit in with his current research. He filed the report away and forgot about it until much later, when he went through his old data looking for entry encounters that could have been Djinn sightings. This story involves an unusual being popping out of a hole and engaging in a short conversation with the witness. The encounter took place in the summer of 1989 and involved a middle-aged man who was hiking through the woods near Ellenville, New York. It was sometime in the afternoon and the day was clear and warm. While walking on a trail that had several small dirt mounds, the man stepped on a flat rock and rocked back and forth under his weight, making a very hollow sound. The man continued his walk, and a moment later he heard a voice behind him say, "Hey, what do you think you're doing?" The man turned round and saw a small man standing on top of the mound looking at him, with a great deal of anger in his eyes. The little man was about 2 feet tall, with a long black beard and dressed in a tight-fitting suit that was black, green and red. The small man's hair was long and fell past his shoulders. The hiker turned round and said, "What do you mean? Who the hell are you?" The strange little man replied, "You stepped on my home and made a noise that woke me from a deep sleep." Pointing to the ground, the little man said, "This is my home right here. How would you like it if I walked over the roof of your home while you were trying to sleep?" The witness was no more than 10 feet from both the hole and the little man. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. As he listened to the little man speak, the witness noticed that the flat stone he stepped on had been moved away to the side of the mound. A perfectly circular dark hole was in its place. In his report, the witness said that the hole was much too dark and deep-looking to account for the bright afternoon. At this point, the man became fearful. He apologised to the little man, who then said, "Why don't you come in and see my home?" The man politely refused, and the creature became visibly upset and said something like, "Then go to hell," and made a number of obscene gestures with his hands. The little man jumped back into the hole and was gone. The witness slowly and cautiously walked over to the hole and, to his amazement, saw that it was gone. All that was left was a small crater in the ground where the rock had rested. The man quickly made his way back to his car and drove home. In the above story, we see the connection between holes and the appearance of what seems to be a harmless, playful green djinn. Could these holes in the ground actually be portals that open, allowing the djinn and other creatures to enter our world? It's possible that these portals can only be opened in certain areas, but they don't seem to be restricted to the mountains and deep woods, with reports of dimensional holes opening up in the homes of people who have had a history of paranormal events since childhood. Summoning green djinn. For the most part, green djinn seem as curious about us as we are about them. As all djinn are shapeshifters, the number of forms a green jinni can take depends on its age and experience. If a green jinni's motive is harmless, it may take on a number of forms that are pleasing to the human eye, hiding its true nature. However, if a jinni is angry or annoyed at a person, it may take on a hideous appearance that would terrify even the bravest human being. According to Turkish belief, the green djinn are the easiest to summon due to their already present interest and curiosity about humanity. If they are open to the communication, the djinn may take on the form of a friendly dog, elf, fairy, or even a beautiful, glowing, angelic-like being. On the other hand, if you summon one or more djinn who don't want to be bothered, you might be in for a great deal of trouble. Several years ago, we received a letter from a woman who grew up in Turkey, who tells a story of how her husband and a number of his friends decided to have some fun and tried to contact the djinn. The encounter took place in Istanbul during a summer evening, sometime during the late 90s. One of the friends had a brother who was quite religious and lived in a mountain village nearby. The men knew this person had abilities to call the djinn, so they all decided to visit him. There are ancient Arabic rituals predating Islam that can be used in conjunction with the Quran to contact the djinn and bring them into our world. The person who had this ability was reluctant to summon the beings, but the others finally talked him into it because they didn't really believe the djinn existed. So the man chanted Islamic prayers from the Quran, and after several minutes the windows blew open. 3 glowing orbs entered the room. The light the orbs gave off was so bright the men had to shield their eyes. The lights were able to move back and forth through the glass without breaking it. The apparently called djinn were very angry they had been interrupted and asked for what purpose they had been summoned. The men didn't know how to respond, and this angered the djinn even more. The house's lights started blinking on and off, and they heard a loud banging on the door and wall. The djinn finally left, and the frightened men began to calm down. In the middle of the commotion, they didn't notice one of the men had gone missing. The other men figured he got scared and ran somewhere to hide. They looked everywhere but couldn't find him. Hours later, the men heard a person crying out on the balcony. They walked out to investigate and found the missing friend crouched in a fetal position, soaked with sweat, his face full of fear. He said that as punishment for their act, the djinn had taken him to their world and brought him back. The man said it was a terrible place and was so frightening that he couldn't talk about it. All the men now believe the djinn are real, and they want nothing to do with them ever again. Blue djinn. The blue djinn, also called marid, are the smallest in number, but are considered the most powerful. The blue djinn rarely interact with the human race, and very little is known about them. Stories vary greatly about who the true evil djinn are, but many say the blue djinn are the most heinous of all. On the other hand, other accounts mention that a number of blue djinn were the ones responsible for saving the entire djinn race from extinction by defeating the evil red djinn, the worshippers of Iblis. The blue djinn are the oldest of the djinn, and their power is said to be just below that of an angel. When the race of Djinn was ordered to leave the physical universe and give it up to Adam, some of the blue Djinn resisted and waged war against the angels. The war lasted 1,000 years, and in the end the angels were victorious, an event that resulted in a rift within the Djinn race. Many repented and obeyed the order to leave what had become Adam's world, but some refused, including an unknown number of powerful blue Djinn and their clans. According to an old Persian belief, if you encounter a very old man alone in the desert, he is most likely a blue Jinni in disguise, secretly entering our world. Travellers are warned to be wary of those who travel in the desert alone. Although the blue Djinn are much more powerful than their green counterparts, they can still be manipulated into doing a human's bidding. On rare occasions, these Djinn are known to grant wishes to those who summon them, but things always turn out badly for the wisher. If approached correctly and with respect, blue Djinn may be persuaded to help a person, especially if that person is troubled by another Jinni. Most blue Djinn have no trouble tolerating humans, and they aren't as given over to outbursts and unpredictable temperaments as the green Djinn. The blue ones lie in wait, accumulating more power as each century passes, hoping that one day they can once again claim what was theirs and defeat their old foes, the angels, in another war. Red Djinn. Red Djinn have one purpose, the downfall of the human race. They are the followers of Iblis, and from the shadows slowly influence humanity's thoughts over the centuries. Red Djinn are the true terrorists of the universe. They whisper in the ears of men and women, causing them to take actions that are against the laws of God and man. Red Djinn are also in the business of collecting human souls in order to make them stronger. The Red Djinn broke all allegiances to their family, clan and king. They only follow Iblis, who is their messiah. Red Djinn usually take on a reptilian form. They are responsible for possession, illness and hauntings. Many modern-day Islamic clerics believe Red Djinn are responsible for alien sightings and all other forms of paranormal phenomena. They are the devils and demons of history, and to deal with one courts disaster. They are eager to grant favours and wishes to humans, but their fee for such services is usually quite costly. Black Djinn. Little information is available about the mysterious Black Djinn. In the Sunnar tradition, they are associated with evil or black magic. We have found one brief mention of them in one other text. They seem to be leaders of the Blue Djinn and are clan leaders or perhaps kings of a large number of clans. Their numbers are unknown. It is possible there is only one who may be the ruler of all other clan leaders and kings. According to legend, when King Solomon ordered the Djinn to obey him, he had a large black Jinni at his side who he was able to control to enforce his will on all of the others. If a green or blue Jinni defied Solomon's orders, the black Jinni punished them. It's clear this particular Jinni king was forced to act as a sergeant of arms for the great king, for he stood by Solomon with his arms folded, in a display of power and authority. However, there was a very discontented expression on his face. Who or what the mysterious black Jinni represents, their interaction with the human race is extremely limited. It may be that they are too important to deal with us and depend on those who serve them to take care of business. Yellow Djinn. Arabic stories of a type of Djinn described as yellow exist, but not much is known about this classification. They seem to isolate themselves from the physical universe and other types of Djinn. Although the term yellow Djinn has come up more than once in our research, we have little information about this class of elusive beings. Ascended Djinn. In metaphysics, the spiritual goal of both humans and Djinn is to ascend to a higher plane of existence. Ascended humans no longer have a need for physical bodies. Ascended Djinn occasionally interact with people who have not ascended, the latter of which might mistake the former for angels or extraterrestrials. We believe ascended Djinn exists, but the only one we know of is Iblis, most likely the most powerful of all Djinn. For the transgression of ascending in order to access the choirs of angels, Iblis may have been demoted and sent to an existence between the physical universe and the realm of ascended beings. From there, Iblis persuaded other powerful Djinn who had not yet ascended to fight for what he convinced them was rightfully theirs, the world of human beings. Although all Djinn are potentially dangerous, Iblis and his Red Djinn have only one thing on their minds: our extinction.